This video, I want to talk to you about the maintaining permanent residency in the United States and reentry permit and how that affects your citizenship, qualifications for citizenship. So you went through the process, you got your green card, you're now a permanent resident in the United States. Congratulations. What you should know is that a permanent residency can be lost. And it can be lost much faster and easier than it took you to get permanent residence in the United States. So what is the primary question? A lot of times people hear about 6 months that you have to spend in the US every year, or that you cannot be absent from US for more than 6 months. There is a lot of talk about 6 months once you become permanent resident. And many people don't understand what that necessarily means. So I'll break it down for you. The key that you should know as a permanent resident is that you, as a permanent resident, must live in the United States. That must be the place of your residence. Now, what is place of residence? Place of residence is the hub, is the place where you are, that's your residence. You basically cannot have two separate residences. You cannot live in another country and in the United States and still be considered a permanent resident of the United States. So your intent, your mind have to be always to permanently live and reside in the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot be absent from the United States for any purposes or for, certain amount of time. So if you have a work, if you have a job, if you have things that you need to take care of in your home country, or if you want to travel overseas and have fun as a visitor or a tourist, you can do so as a permanent resident. With your green card, you can travel in and out of the United States freely. However, each time you travel abroad, this question comes up. What was the purpose of your visit? Do you still intend and live in the United States, or whether you're just using your permanent residency card, green card, as a visa to just freely be able to come into the United States, to enter the US, which is not supposed to. And that's when you can lose your green card. Now, how can the Customs and Border Patrol immigration officers at the border, how can they read your mind? How can they know at the time you return into the United States whether you, despite your absences, have you intended to remain? Are you still a permanent resident or not? They cannot, they cannot read your mind. There is no technology. But what they can do is they can use the information, and one of they obtain from your travel, and that could be the information. One of the information that is going to be useful for the officer to determine is going to be the length of your absence. The other way to obtain information is going to be the officer is going to be asking you, even if you traveled for 10 days and the officer at the border asked you what was the purpose of your travel to, whatever country you traveled, then you say that, oh, because I live there, I'm coming to visit my relative or my daughter or my son, then this officer must take away your permanent resident card, give you summons to appear in immigration court, and then let you into the United States. And that may be the last time you're entering the United States, if that's the case. But it's very rare anybody's going to admit, even if they are permanent residents in some other country, or if that's where they live and they're just using the card to be able to freely travel into the US and back, they're not going to voluntarily say so. So the other piece of information that the officers have access to is the length of your absence. And that's where the 6 months come from. So to create some kind of rule, some kind of guidance for the immigration officers at the border to decide who, by their actions, demonstrated that they are probably not permanent residents in the US, but they're just using the green card, they came up with a rule guidance to the officers saying that if a permanent resident is absent from US during a single trip for more than 6 months, then that officer has to presume that this LPR, lawful permanent resident, abandoned his or her intent to permanently live in the United States. And if they presume so, then the applicant has a burden of proof. They can prove to the officer that, no, despite me being absent for more than 6 months, I did not abandon my intent to live in the United States, and here is the evidence. So They can show close ties like property ownership in the US, taxes they filed, having a bank account, having a state ID, driver's license, car registration, bank statements. So there may be many kinds of evidence that one can carry with him or her traveling abroad and returning as a permanent resident that can be used to overcome that presumption that they may have abandoned their permanent residency in the United States. But what if it's, so that is if it's more than 6 months, but what if it's more than 12 months that this a permanent resident has been absent from the United States for more than 1 year during a single trip? Then the guidance given to the officers is that they're supposed to take they still should make a decision, question the applicant, the returning immigrant, but they also, the guidance is that they can take the permanent resident card, the green card, issue summons, and call them to immigration court. So it's much less likely that you'll be able to convince the officer that you've been absent for reasonable reasons than if you were absent for less than 1 year. But what can you do? Let's say if you have a job abroad and you are planning to work there for the next 2 years or more, and you're a permanent resident, you don't want to abandon your permanent residence in the US, but you want to be absent for some time. So there is a process for that. It's called reentry permit application. So what you can do is you can apply for pre-authorization to be absent from the US for up to 2 years, and it can be extended for another 2 years, and then in 1 year increments. You can apply for that pre-authorization to be absent from the United States as a permanent resident without losing your permanent residency. So it's basically telling up front that I'm going to be absent for some time, but don't count it against me. I have this thing that I need to take care of. And it's very liberally approved. I've never seen a reentry permit denied, despite even just showing just general reasons that I want to be, hang out with relatives or take care of some things before I finally move to the US. So the reentry permit is granted liberally. But the problem, what we face as immigration lawyers many times, frequently, is that the clients that come in, they have trouble with their green cards being lost or being absent for so long, and they haven't considered, or they didn't even know of the existence of the reentry permit. The reentry permit is a very important and very useful tool. It happens many times in the context of parents of US citizens who, immigrated into the US, became green card holders and then citizens, and then they sponsor their parents. And the parents may be elderly people, they may have work or things that they need to wrap up in their home country, and eventually they're planning to move here and live here. So they travel frequently back and forth to visit their children here in the US with the ultimate goal of permanently living in the US, but they still got a lot going on in their home country, and they don't have re-entry permit. And if they don't have a re-entry permit, every time they enter the US, they're being questioned. There is a secondary inspection. They may be held for hours. Or in the worst case scenario, the Customs and Border Patrol agents, they give them a form where they voluntarily surrender their permanent residency in the hopes that they're not going to be detained for any longer at the border, which is, never is advisable to sign. The best thing is to enter the US. They must let you in, even if you have been absent for a long time. They have to let you in and enter the United States, then consult with a lawyer. And if need be, then you may need to defend your permanent residency in immigration court. But re-entry permit allows you to prevent all this from happening. You can apply for re-entry permit while you're physically in the United States, and you must be also in the US for biometrics, fingerprinting appointment. And the time difference between those two can be several months, or it can be less. So some people choose to apply and wait for the biometrics, and then they leave, and you don't have to wait for the re-entry permit to arrive in the mail. You can actually get it to delivered somewhere, and it can be mailed to you abroad. But some people choose to live in between, where they apply and then they leave the US to take care of whatever they need to take care of in their home country, and then they come back for biometrics, and then after biometrics, they also leave. So re-entry permit is a very important and very useful tool. Many people don't know this, or many people have this great idea of how to apply for it and think that it's very burdensome. It's not. It's very easy, very simple, and very helpful. My recommendation is anybody who has either frequent travels or possibilities of long absences from the US, you should apply for re-entry permit, and we will be glad to help you. Our law firm handles re-entry permits for many lawful permanent residents. We frequently file re-entry permits, and we'll be glad to help you. So please contact us at the contact links below and subscribe to our channel and hit like. Thank you very much.